Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is going to be reviewing LP by JPEGMAFIA. Now this is going to be a review of that album, but it's also partially going to be something of an artist study, studying the place of the artist in modern society, in hip-hop, and in particular the space for artists who fit into the category of alternative hip-hop or underground hip-hop. I would argue that part of the reason we are living through the greatest era of hip-hop that there has ever been, okay? I'm saying this as a guy who grew up in the Wu-Tang Clan era, who grew up with Run DMC as a kid, okay? I'm telling you, this is the greatest era there's ever been for hip-hop. And part of the reason why is there's so much space for different kinds of greatness. Different approaches, different techniques, different mindsets, different life experiences, different classes, races, genders, nationalities. There's so much space in hip-hop. And I think a lot of that has come from the increasing democratization of creation and distribution. So part of hip-hop's revolution was democratizing creation. You didn't need a microphone even, you didn't even really need anything other than just your voice. You could beatbox and rap, maybe you could get a turntable, but whatever it was, as I like to say, rock and roll is hockey and rap is soccer. All you need is a ball, right? But I would say with computers, the democratization has gotten even greater. Where yes, you need a computer, but once you do, you can do everything on your own. Which is why it seems like every week I'm reviewing at least one great, independently self-produced project. You know, just over the last year, Mac Miller, Kanye, Tyler, JPEGMAFIA, Milo, right? All of these, I ran out. Aesop Rock, right? I'm running out of time to tell you all these great people who are doing all this great work. And I think it's very special when we have this moment. Self-produced rappers, people who are doing everything, inhabit a space which traditionally has been for like very insular, like college rock, you know? People like me, when I was in my 20s, I made albums where I played every note on every instrument and I was just alone with my 4-track, you know? Or folk, or techno, right? And I think that the JPEGMAFIA really shows off the greatness of this moment. I think there's also an interesting parallel between him and another Brooklyn rapper that I've covered who self-produces, which is Ka. I think it's interesting because they're both these Brooklyn MCs and they both have fulfilled these roles of sort of traditional, acceptable American masculinity, with Ka being a firefighter and JPEGMAFIA being a vet. I'm not capable of doing it, but I would hope maybe someday FD Signifier or someone of his caliber, there's not many people of his caliber, would do something about black masculinity in traditionally white masculine spaces and how that's shown in hip-hop. I think you could just take JPEGMAFIA and Ka, very close on the alphabet, and just go through the ways that they are able to exist in this space and always be able to fall back on the fact that no matter what people may think of them as rap artists, they are this thing that is so prized and praised in our culture. Part of what makes this album so interesting, LP, exclamation point, or as I call it, LP, is that there are two different versions, the online version and the offline version. Little trouble in advertising there as both versions are only available online, but the idea is that the offline version is truer to his art. That's the version that the record company didn't want to release, so he put it out on YouTube and he put it out on Bandcamp. I listened to it so much, Bandcamp made me buy it, so I paid $5 for it. Thank you, Peggy. The online version is on streaming, and I've never listened to it, and I'm not going to listen to it. If an artist tells me what they think, I just believe them, and I just do it, all right? Because that's what we're here for, you know, we're here to celebrate the arts, right? It seems that the primary difference between them, based on what I've read, is sample clearance. So, this got me thinking on a whole nother tangent. I'll get to a review of JPEGMAFIA, okay? But I'm having fun here. JPEGMAFIA, one thing about him is he really encourages deep thought. That's one thing I'll say about his music. Like when I listen to it, I'm just constantly, I have all these ideas going on in my head while I'm listening. Some of them aren't about the music, but about what the music can represent or what he's talking about. With his insistence on sampling and creating this whole other version which features sampling more prominently, it reminds us of the ways that money almost killed hip-hop, right? I mean, money definitely hurt hip-hop, definitely changed it. It used to be that hip-hop included dancing and graffiti. There was no way to monetize that, so that basically died off in American hip-hop. But so much of what made hip-hop fascinating was the postmodern act, was the fabulously metatextual elements of sampling. Along with that came the DJs. And we've seen the death of DJs and the death of sampling over the past 10 years. It's been slow, there's still sampling, there's still holdouts, but in general, we find rudimentary keyboard parts, we have more trained musicians making hip-hop beats, because who wants to give all their money to lawyers, or who wants to give all their money to some old person who made a song? I think that's part of JPEGMAFIA's freedom, part of what makes him such a great emblem of independent hip-hop, that he just breaks free of this and puts the samples that he wants to put on, and lawyers be damned. It would be nice. I don't know. Maybe someone could do something about this copyright hold that we have. Maybe there could be a hip-hop exemption, because we are really missing something. And when you listen to an album like JPEGMAFIA, with his usage of samples, which isn't all over the place, it's judiciously used, when you hear it, you just go, oh my God, sampling is so awesome. Part of what I love about sampling is it can put you down a rabbit hole. It's actually not just taking music and reproducing it for you. It's taking music and showing it to you. I can't tell you, I discovered the meters. I discovered Isaac Hayes. I discovered James Brown thanks to sampling. So I want to take you on one of the rabbit holes, because that's what happens now with the internet. You have these artists who sample something, and then you can learn all about the artists that they're sampling, and you can try to see, is there a conversation happening between these artists? There's a song which samples some techno music. The song is called Are You Happy? And it samples the underground resistance, or members of the underground resistance in one of their songs. And I just want to go down this rabbit hole with you to draw up some parallels between techno and hip-hop. Now, first of all, you might be like me. You might not have known techno is black when it started, okay? There were Germans, Kraftwerk, who made great music, and then in the suburbs of Detroit, the music that we call techno was pioneered. Interestingly, it was pioneered in a bizarre way, in which it was primarily middle-class black suburbanites who resented urban culture, who resented lower-class black people from Detroit. They even used some racial slur I'd never heard before. I'm not going to say it. It starts with J, ends with T, has an I in the middle. That's the whole word. There's a very strong division between middle class and lower class African Americans in Detroit. So how bizarre is that, right? That's just a little fact I learned going down this rabbit hole. Thanks to JPEGMAFIA sampling this song, Are You Happy? All of a sudden I'm learning about this crazy divide in the African American community in Detroit in the 80s that I'd never thought about. But I'm not done yet, because JPEGMAFIA doesn't sample the first wave of Detroit techno that had that great divide. He samples the second wave, which was primarily driven by the underground resistance. Where we had in the first wave this division, we had something of unification. It was now no longer against the urban African Americans. It was by the urban African Americans or with them. No more were we in this separated, weird, class-based division. So I think it's meaningful. If we think about techno, we think about this experience, I would actually like to compare this to the experience and the development of alternative hip-hop. First, I'm going to be making a lot of comments and discussions about African American culture and about black culture. I want to make it very clear, I am not an expert. I'm not a part of that culture. I don't pretend to be a part of that culture. I am a real academic. This was the book I used most in my thesis, okay? Molière, 17th century French poet, right? I mean, a playwright. You can see all the notes. If you follow all those, you'll go to different places in the library, at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I wrote it all up. But this is the guy that I studied, okay? I'm probably closer, culturally. My life experience is probably closer to him than it is to JPEGMAFIA or to anybody that I'm talking about. But in a similar way, that's why I study hip-hop. I don't study hip-hop because I am part of hip-hop. I study hip-hop because it is the best culture that is being made right now. My job is to analyze culture, and I can't help it if it's so good and so vibrant. I am literally powerless. I can't ignore it, okay? I did for a long time, but I can't ignore it anymore. I can't go back to Molière, Bourgeois Gentilhomme. I have more things to say about this. This work is great. But right now, what's happening is so fascinating. So, I'm an appreciator and an observer. And I think if we take this techno question, with the first wave of techno having a sort of classist bent against lower class black people from the same city, I think alternative hip hop has had something of a similar trajectory. Once there was a mainstream and an alternative, quite frequently, that the mainstream would be denigrated by the alternative, by the underground. Okay? Let me give you a famous example of a very uncomfortable moment. Speaking of uncomfortable moments of whiteness, it was Lollapalooza 3. Okay, boomer. Lollapalooza 3, I think it was 3. It could have been 2, 3, or 4, one of those 3. And the group Arrested Development got up and performed. And if you don't know Arrested Development, they were a very popular, non-traditional hip-hop band that was a little bit more jazzy, that was in contradiction with what was then the mainstream. And they get up at the microphone, and they go, okay, so I'm there in Mansfield, Massachusetts, at what was then called the Tweeter Center. I am there, and I am surrounded by 20,000 other white dudes in their late teens, okay? And the guy from Arrested Development gets on the microphone and says, I want you to know, we love black people, but we hate N-words. Except he said the N-word, okay? And the crowd, you know, you can get a crowd to clap to anything. And so they're all like, yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not gonna clap for that. I don't know what this means. I feel conflicted. I never listened to Arrested Development again. I was shocked, I was hurt, and I recognized a real loss in the culture. The idea that people from a different experience would have to put down the people from the more often represented experience. So I think this moment in hip-hop sees us go past that, where the underground is the alternative is filled with so many alternative experiences. Yeah, you have middle-class kids, you have white kids, you have probably even some upper-class kids, if you consider people like Kenny Beats and The Alchemist, who grew up in relative financial luxury, you know? And you have a whole stream of underground rappers who don't define themselves as not being like those other guys. When we think about Griselda, when we think about Tyler, the Creator, when we think about JPEGMAFIA, they're not defining themselves as we're not Migos, right? They are just simply making rap in a different lane and not making an attack. So I personally believe that I don't know if this is on purpose. I can tell you one thing I understand about JPEGMAFIA. He's like a lot of these underground self-produced rappers. They are so damn smart that I don't actually understand what they're doing a lot of the time. That it would be arrogant for me to assume, and presumptuous, to assume that I understand all the things that are going on. So I think this reference, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is an intentional reference to the second wave of Detroit techno. And this is part of what JPEGMAFIA is doing. Part of what makes rap so great right now is we no longer have to sit in the audience while one group puts down the other group. Speaking of putting down, this album is largely about label beef. He's very upset with his label. As he says in the liner notes on Bandcamp, which you can get if you buy the album, name your own price. I understand that in this day and age, a black man being great at what he does consistently is just not enough for some. Then later he declares, my time in the music industry is over because I refuse to be disrespected by people who aren't respectable in the first place. So there is an element of this album. And I don't know if it's on purpose. I've only listened to his EP2 and this. I'm not a great JPEG Mafia expert. But there is something about the fractured nature of the sound of this album. There's a rawness to the album. It's hard to feel it sometimes. Is he doing his best? Or is this intentionally raw and intentionally rough to try to piss off his label? I don't even know what his label is. I guess I should have looked that up. You tell me in the comments if you want. Overall, this album is a very challenging album in the way that it's never just straight up broken crazy beats. There are these surprising moments of sublime cohesion. Jesus, it's a pretentious word, but it's true. Great moments of sublime cohesion. It's dirty, it's interesting, it's minimalist at times, but that's also maximalist at times with the amount of layers that go on here. So much space to breathe. Maybe this is only on the offline version, right? But there's just so much space. It feels personal, it feels weird, but never weird for weirdness' sake. Speaking of weird, the thing that I find most interesting about JPEG Mafia is his voice. Given his posture, given this griminess, given the way that he presents himself, I'm always struck by how high and clear his voice is. I mean, sometimes he whispers and growls, but the way he presents himself, I still, if you ask me what does his voice sound like, my first thing, oh, he's one of those growling, kind of grimy rappers, but he isn't really. As a rhyme maker, I don't think that's the point. I don't think his point is bars. I don't think his point is to be the best MC. Sometimes he's a great MC. Most of the time he's a good MC. But I think it's more the complete package. His ability to put out an album that has a consistent feel, or not a consistent feel, has many different interesting atmospheres that interact with one another and makes this great object for us to analyze. I think it can all come together in my homework, my stamp, my song of the album, which I think is a good example, and it's called What Kinda Rappin' Is This? I'll include a link to it up there, okay? Production-wise, it has this really drowsy opening, a good example of how JPEG just lets it breathe. And then when the beat comes in, there's this crazy harp sample. It makes harp seem aggressive. Eventually these drums come in and it's just amazing. I don't understand how he's able to get all these things to come in and work all together at once. Some soul samples come in as well. It's all of this layering. That's what I'm telling you. The democratization of production, he's able to do this with a computer in front of him. All he needs is the brilliance, the creativity to put it all together, and he does. Even some great work with the drums and some rat-a-tat stuff. And then the whole song exists in what appears to be a satirical mode at times and a genuine mode at times as well. He starts off just saying the words wrist, wrist, wrist over and over again. And the title of the song, What Kind of Rapping Is This?, is a real question. I think he's asking what kind of rapping is it that other people do, and then what kind of rapping is it that he does, right? So I don't know if I have to stop saying right. Someone told me in the comments that I say right too often. And now I'm all up in my head every time I say it. Every time I say it, leave a comment. So like talking about wrist, 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 and diamonds and ice, 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 it feels like he's both saying it and also commenting on it, while going further and releasing a song in which the verses are not that clear, the metaphors are a little bit odd. Lil B word, I've been rapping like this. Marion Barry, I'm taking a hit. He carried a cross, I carry the clip. Like, what kind of rapping is this? What kind of rapping is that? Is he saying that Marion Barry carried a cross? The disgraced Washington, D.C. mayor who was caught on camera smoking crack, which, now that I think about it, was like a really definitive moment in the consistent war against African Americans in the 80s, mediated through the crack crisis. Okay. Hey, does someone want to do a video about Marion Barry? I will Patreon you $20 if you do a good video about Marion Barry. If there's anyone watching, because I bet there's something there to that. And then eventually this builds into a chorus, and it's kind of a catchy chorus, and the whole song has this feel that JPEG Mafia is capable of doing. Just having this weird song with odd, sublime cohesion all coming together. I'm not going to go through the rest of the album, a little bit quicker than that. The song Trust, almost a techno song, a little bit of a whisper, repeating over and over again. He's talking about how he looks good. it seems to me that part of him rapping about looking good is him reassuring himself. There is a vulnerability in here as well. The next song, Dirty, a broken beat, kind of odd and nice, opens up with a very chopped, slowed down voice. All these voices in the background, all these beat changes. Again, I would say he plays so much with maximalist and minimalist where sometimes it feels like there's nothing going on and sometimes it feels like there's too much. Nemo has got kind of a weird twerky beat. Opens up with this You Think You Know Me producer tag, which thanks to Rap Genius, I discovered is all from some wrestler. Okay. Between every single Griselda project, between FD Signifier's magnum opus on Kanye, and between this album, between JPEGMAFIA, it makes me feel really dumb for not knowing more about wrestling. I used to like wrestling, you know, when I was a kid. You know, Rowdy Roddy Piper, all that stuff. Coco Beware. I saw his first match. That was cool. You know, but like, I dropped off at that point. Here we have Arn Anderson talking about how he would never get carjacked, and just goes, the song end credits has like, it's all sped up and it sounds kind of odd and agitating. It's like heavy metal, like prog metal. Is he rapping? Is he sped up? It's hard to tell what's happening here. Like all the sounds that are happening, this is a complete, as far as I can tell, I've never heard any rap song that sounds like this before. I don't mean that necessarily in a good way, because when I listened to the album fourth time, I skipped this one. Hazard Duty Pay, I do not skip. This is part of what I think JPEGMAFIA is doing. I think he's integrating a little bit of the vaporwave aesthetic into hip-hop. If you don't know vaporwave, it's chopped, it's slowed down 80s synthesizer, R&B, pop, soul music, usually played to some kind of semi-psychedelic views of rundown shopping malls. The sample from Marvin from the Winans, Sometimes We Feel Pain, it has that bizarre, really far away vaporwave fine. I think this is another example of JPEGMAFIA doing something that I haven't heard in rap before. The next song, I'd say, does a somewhat similar, actually, not the next song, that's a little bit later. Sorry, I don't edit these. I jumped ahead on my notes. You can write that in the comments if that bothered you. He's, in this song, the way this sample is used, it doesn't feel like it's any other soul sample in any other music. It feels like it's so weird. It's so oppressively present. It doesn't quite even go with the beat. That's how it gives me that far away feeling, that vaporwave feeling. God Don't Like Ugly was almost my stamp. It's basically not even quite a song. It's like chopped up and weird, slightly gospel sounds. Some of his most direct attacks on white people. He also refers to himself as a young Frank Zappa while calling you Sarah Palin. I think that's funny. You know, there's no overlap between Frank Zappa and Sarah Palin, but Sarah Palin is, I would argue, the most not Frank Zappa politician that there is, you know, even more than Tipper Gore or whatever. I think, again, I don't know JPEGMAFIA's life experience. I don't know how, like, all the references he makes here, calling himself a young Frank Zappa does work. There's a lot of people who I think could make a fight to say who is the Frank Zappa of hip-hop. I don't think anyone has done it yet because you need more technical proficiency in some way. I mean, like absolute precision. And I don't think of any rapper as being there yet. No other rockers have done it since Zappa either. So, you know, there's only one Zappa for a reason. Then What Kind of Rapping Is This? My stamp. And then Thoughts Prayer. Another one of these vaporwave feeling songs. But this time it's him singing Hit Me Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. What I love is, you know, I bought that album when it came out in '99. You know, I was already in my 20s and into indie music and all that stuff, but I recognized that as a good album, and in particular that as a good song. And this was way before there were covers. Like when you listen to those chorus, you know, like my loneliness is killing me, like that's the first line. My loneliness is killing me, and I still believe. It is a painful, emotional song. By recontextualizing it in this way, I think JPEGMAFIA has done something great with this song. Done something great by re-singing it, by sort of delivering on the emotional core of the song. Again, adding some other music, some gospel music underneath. the layers are just maddening. They're so good on JPEGMAFIA. And some of these lyrics, "Don't stop lying." What? No, who says "don't stop lying"? Next track is "Are You Happy," which I previously mentioned with my theory about second wave Detroit techno and how it relates to modern alternative hip hop. I said all that, didn't I? Tell me in the comments if you like that kind of stuff, by the way, because that's really going out on a limb, you know? This is like, okay. So this has this great sample, and I said it was Underground Resistance. It was by a band called Galaxy to Galaxy, which is actually just made up of members from Underground Resistance. And it opens up with a wonderful questionnaire. Am I happy? Am I doing what I want to do? Interesting usage of this techno song, then gets mixed in with some like walkie-talkie beeps. And then when I heard it, I go, you know what? That sounds just like the lead singer from that band that did Love Fool. What were they called? Avalanches? No, it wasn't Avalanches. What was it? What was that band? That band that did Love Fool, and I listened to their whole album, and I thought it sounded more like Black Sabbath than like Ace of Base. What was that band? The Cardigans. And then I look up on who sampled, and they are sampling the Cardigans as well. So we have this like walkie-talkie, house music, reggae rhythms, voices in the back, a female voice. So much stuff is going on. He's rapping with some kind of filter on here. So many things happening. Yet, with all that happening, I always feel space in this song. I should feel claustrophobic, but I don't. Rebound, featuring Dat Piff Mafia, a great, super strong bass-led beat. Eventually these horn sounds come in. This is more of just kind of a straightforward hip-hop song. Great attacks with like very short verses, just attacks. D0 NOT F with me, baby I can't be stopped for real. Oops, I did it again. He quotes Britney Spears again. I like the idea of saying D0 not F with me. I like the idea of playing around with zeros and nos. And this whole song just makes you go, oh, okay. If JPEGMAFIA wanted to, he could make an album of bangers and bars, and that he could have done that. JPEGMAFIA, come out with an album called Bangers and Bars. Do songs like this, blow everybody's mind, and then go back to doing whatever you want to do. Actually, don't. You're way more interesting than that. But this is proof that he could. Next one is the 100 emoji is the title. It's like, this is the best example of why the offline version is important. It's a straight sample from someone named Young Dolph, who I don't know about. Tell me in the comments if I should know about him. These odd avant-garde sounds, just the whole idea of straight up sampling basically another song makes this feel almost like a mixtape. Not like a mixtape, like a hip hop mixtape, but like, hey, I made a mixtape of some music for you. Again, with the Galaxy to Galaxy and this, and then the next song, it does feel on a certain extent that JPEGMAFIA is trying to teach you. Here's some music to listen to. Here's some stuff that happened. Like on the next song, OG. An amazing sync beat with this old school rapper, Just Ice, who I never heard of before. I know I should, but I spent too much time thinking about Moliere. This like old school rapper and beatboxer, and then mixes it together with a modern drum beat. I don't know how he does it. Like, I don't know how he does it. This is one of the best produced rap songs of the year, I would argue. And it's just in the middle of this album. And it has a true, he changes his flow to have it sound like an old school rapper. It's between this and the Galaxy to Galaxy and the Winans, we're having all these samples and thoughts, and we're really expanding our musical vocabulary just by listening to this one album. Dikembe has a crazy, like, sounds like two samples happening at once. One of them is the Stan Getz sample that was first used by the Pharcyde, speaking of the sort of early days of alternative hip hop. This like bass comes in and it sounds like it's almost from a different song. And then like his vocals are underwater and far away. Tired, Nervous, and Broke has this languid, like splashing sample that then settles with a beat with tons of percussion. He calls someone black like Ben Carson, which was kind of funny. And he seems to be, this may be the best example of bars on the album here. This and the one I mentioned previously, 100, have this kind of feeling where you understand, okay, he could do it if he wants to. But then he ends this fairly straightforward song with him talking about some album that came out. I don't know what album he's talking about. Again, tell me in the comments. And then he's singing a duet with a woman, and you can hear the chair creaking. Just like if you listen carefully, you can hear the chair creaking in this video, and it's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazier than the fact that I keep saying right. It creaks, right? So you can hear the creaks in the chair of this badly recorded duet. And it's like you're walking past, you know, when you go to the bathroom at a movie theater and sometimes there's little windows and you can see the screen. Like you go by and the little movie that's in the screen is better than the movie you're watching, you know? Like maybe you went to go see Halloween Kills and you walked by something that had Candyman, and like Candyman is maybe the best movie of the entire year. You absolutely must see it. You know, and I kind of wish I was in there. Like I wish this song were on the album. It is on the album, but what is this song? Why are you having this amazing duet? Like, why is your voice so beautiful? Why is her voice so beautiful? Why is this not on the album? I think it's a little bit of him flexing his ability and his artistic talent to just say, just put this on there, and it makes it feel a little bit more like a journal, a little bit less like an album. Fire Emojis, basically a full R&B song, like sultry with a beat, and then there's some beat switches. And that's where he makes one of my favorite political lines here, which is why I have this excellent book up there. I suggest you read it if you've never read it. Susan Jeffords, Hard Bodies. Baby Reagan, I'm cracking the case, trickle down, get that ish off my chest. So referencing Reagan's probable implication into the previously mentioned crack epidemic, and then referencing trickle-down economics, which is the economic policy which continued America's terrible treatment of the American ghetto. Next song is called Nice. It was very loud. I was in the car with the doctor and Mrs., and she said, it sounds like somebody's in pain. So she made me skip it. I'm going to skip it too. It's kind of like a pump-up song. We get to BMT. Okay, I keep saying what's my favorite song on the album. This is my favorite song, BMT. It's got this weird like marching sound, I guess referring to the fact he used to be a veteran. This kind of like march that doesn't quite, it's a little bit janky, doesn't quite work. And then it settles down with this other beat. There's this blown out bass, and it's just that thing that JPEG's capable of doing, just making these beats that just don't make sense. The sublime cohesion I keep talking about. This is the sublime cohesion coming together, and how does this weird chant, it's like Indonesian army chant, I don't know what the hell it is. And then we got this drum beat coming over here, and then the chanting goes out for the verse, and then his verse, F my sergeants, F your bags, F that harness, F them planes, F the music, F them chains, F your videos, F your face. This great just explosion of aggression and anger all mixed in with this great beat that all comes together. I really like it. I feel a little bit cheap for only giving him $5 for the album. I like physical media. If this album comes out on vinyl, I'll buy it. Ghost of the Ranking Dead, featuring TK Maidagza. Kind of a soulful song. It seems to be like sort of rapping, it's almost a sex song. There's a cool breakdown with some horns, like some reggae sounds in the back. One thing to say is that this starts off and ends in a very different place. And this is another thing that JPEG does that I like, where you get the sense that there's like movement to the songs, where it might start like here and then end somewhere completely different, and that does it here. It seems like he's taking shot at Arm & Hammer. I like that album. I don't get that. Damn, Damn, Damn has a nice, calm, and extended intro with these like kind of cheesy, nice keyboard sounds, and it fades out, and you go, okay, that was just an interlude. And then it comes back. And this is the beauty of whatever this offline version is. Whatever anger JPEG appears to have with his record company, at least in this version, he appears to be doing exactly what he wants. And he really disses other rappers on this. This is maybe the most effective dismissal of other rappers, destruction of other rappers through dismissal. He just says, I just gotta sum you up, like put you in a bucket. Like he's not even like going specific, just saying like you're just over there. And these drums are just really, really great interaction between the keyboard and the drum beat. At some point, maybe, I'll work on trying to figure out who does the best layering in hip-hop. There's a lot of great layering happening right now. Like between what Kanye's up to and what Tyler's up to and what JPEGMAFIA's up to, we got a lot of great, we have a lot of great simpler stuff too. You know, the Griselda stuff is usually just a beat and great rhymes, but there's all this layering happening, and it's amazing. Then the album ends with Untitled, which has a similar keyboard line from Damn Damn Damn. At different points in this album, it feels like songs are kind of chunked together. You know, like there's the kind of vaporwavy chunk, and there's the kind of like 80s sounding sample chunk. This feels very connected to the previous song with the keyboard sound. Then he just makes some of the craziest references I've ever heard in hip hop. Gotta keep my hairline on, Candace Owens, Kevin Owens, real F a token, melatonin, sleeping on the moment, at me with the Glock loaded, Joe Budden with the pump when I'm focused. So referencing Joe Budden, not the YouTuber, Joe Budden, the rapper, who had the song Pump It Up. How you never miss when the whole world is hopeless. Joe Biden, can't remember, I gotta focus. I learned recently that Joe Budden autocorrects to Joe Biden. How have we not made Joe Budden connections? And then he says, I'm gonna be swinging on these crackers like I'm playing hockey. Young PK Subban with the stick on me. I don't know if this is the first hip hop reference to a not superstar hockey player, but I love hearing this. You know, PK Subban is one of the great hockey players of his generation, one of the best defensemen of his generation, played for the Canadiens. He happens to be black and a black Canadian, you know, and just this pull, right? Just like this swinging on crackers, like hockey is a traditionally white space. So then bringing in PK Subban with the stick on me, stick, I suppose, metaphor for gun, just a beautiful line, and followed up with these Grey Worm, straight unsullied, you know, a sort of nerdy reference in addition to the hockey reference. Just the high school me would have been very excited because I was a big nerd and I loved hockey. So there you go. There's my review of JPEGMAFIA. What an album, what an experience. I'm very excited to see what he does next. These are my Patreons. I paid $5 and I take the money that they give me. I don't keep any of the money that y'all give me. I just use it to buy music and support artists, including JPEGMAFIA. So this is a new list. You see some new people there. This guy right there, Matthew Brown, he jumped up from the LP level. So he's now a double LP. So that's pretty sweet. And, you know, thanks to everyone here. You know, I got a lot more names on there. I put them in order of when they joined up, not alphabetical. So, you know, you can be on here too. Patreon.com. All right. Well, I think I'm going to be reviewing Lana Del Rey next. Gonna give me whiplash. Emotional whiplash. What? All right. Until next time, there's the camera.